All right, welcome everyone. It's 1 minute past 10, so we'll get started. This is the 5th of idea generating sessions for brain and neuroscience grand challenges. We are asking for all ideas and here on Idea Note, and this is a program organized in collaboration with Office of Vice President for Research and Provost Office, and the Vice President for Research, Ramasubramanian, is right here to give us our charge.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Jaideep. On behalf of the Provost and me, I would like to welcome you all to this forum on brain development and cognitive neuroscience. As you know, some of you have attended several of these. This is a series of forums to really bring about a coalescence of faculty researchers working in the area of brain and neuroscience in general, and see if we have thematic core strengths that we can build on. The topic is quite capacious. This topic includes, but not limited to, autism spectrum disorders, human brain development and intellectual disabilities, and mechanisms of neurodevelopment. Over the years, we at UVA have built our strengths in these areas systematically through target hires, coordinated hires between schools, a weaker version of cluster hires, investment in infrastructure, and seed funding through SIF, and so on. You have already made groundbreaking discoveries in some of these topics and working on very important questions. The purpose of this forum, as I said, is to bring people working in this area together to discuss your strengths, accomplishments, and vision for your work, while listening to others to find a unifying grand challenge topic where you can bring all your talents and resources to effectively address them and move UVA from a prominent institution in this space to a preeminent institution in this space, which is what we all of us hope for. So the questions to you are, where does UVA's expertise reside in this broad area of brain development and cognitive neuroscience? What do we do well as individuals or in small groups now, and how can we coalesce into finding solutions for larger challenges? What are those grand challenges? What are those big questions where you see a part that you can play? With your input through this forum and later, as Jaideep said in the idea note, we are confident that we can synthesize them into meaningful grand challenge questions and deploy resources confidently to help you achieve your goals and dreams. I want to thank all of you for your time and participation, and I look forward to listening to the presentations, discussions, and the summary at the end. Now back to Jaideep.
Amy, go ahead.
So I think the plan for this morning is we'll start with some opening remarks from Kevin and JC.
Sounds good. JC, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Either way, I can go first if you want me to.
Go ahead, JC.
Great, thank you. Thank you all. Good morning. I'm really excited to be here discussing this particular topics. I may be stating the obvious here, but it only makes sense to invest in our strengths to achieve from prominence to preeminence. And certainly developmental neurobiology and human neuroscience are among the strongest of neuroscience at UVA. I also like having these two areas in one session because I hope it will generate lots of exciting interactions and collaborations that will put UVA over the top. I'll just use biology and psychology, my two home departments as an example. As many of you know, the biology department has a long history, has in fact been a world leader in developmental biology in areas such as pattern formation, cell migration, and cell differentiation. And following this tradition, we now in the biology department have a strong presence in developmental neurobiology. On the other hand, in the psychology department, the developmental psychology area has always ranked very high nationally. I think within top 10, certainly within top 20. With research on human development across the lifespan, such as infant and child development and social development, among others. There are also labs in both departments that use animal models, such as my lab, to study neurosystems development, especially sensory development. Of course, there are also many labs in the medical school working on similar topics. There are also research in the education school on human development. So it's rather easy to imagine productive collaborations, between labs along this wide spectrum, some of which are already happening, by the way, as many of you know. And this can go both directions, from animal models to human development and back, and for studying both normal development and developmental disorders. So that's why I believe strategic investment in this area, both areas, in the collaboration of both areas, can really make a huge impact across a wide spectrum of neuroscience at UVA, from molecules to the mind and from synapses to the society. Thank you.
Great, thanks, JC. That was terrific. Really only add to that I've participated in all of the prior sessions, to really try to understand the different kinds of activities that are going on. And it really occurred to me that development, what we're talking about, a new kind of research organization that bridges psychological and neurobiological, computational and data sciences. And one of the common themes that seemed to come up over and over again was the importance of a developmental perspective on each of the topics that we focused on. And to remind everyone maybe of the obvious that development is a perspective. It's it's not a specific tool or a method, but it really is a set of principles that what we're interested in as neuroscientists is the behavior that emerges from a system of interactions across levels of analysis. And you start to think about how potentially one could organize around a common purpose all the different neuroscientists on grounds, and then actually all the schools and different departments around really trying to understand healthy brain development across the lifespan. Imagine having centers focused on the different subject matter areas that we have discussed that would then explicitly have a developmental focus, so the Center for Developmental Cognitive Neuroscience, Center for Developmental Computational Neuroscience, development of addiction, pain, and the role of interoception and the emergence of the self. And I think that what development and what our discussion here today might hold is the key to kind of providing an overarching framework for where we could distinguish ourselves from every other place by really taking a developmental perspective on every topic within neuroscience. And in doing so, that would, I think, touch on pretty much every topic that would be of interest in society, because of this developmental perspective that considers these bidirectional influences from molecules to cells to circuits, families, communities, societies. And that could really lead to some science. I would envision these centers being highly interactive and integrative, and perhaps sharing a common cohort, a lifespan cohort of families recruited, and their infants followed and their families followed several generations of the families. But anyway, that's kind of my encouragement for everyone on a call to talk about development, to take a developmental perspective. So I'm probably preaching to the choir here.
Thanks, Kevin.
Okay, so at this point, we can transition to the breakout room. So we have 3 breakout sessions planned for today. One is on autism spectrum disorders. So Kevin and Micah will lead that. There's a session on Human Brain Development and Intellectual Disabilities. Karen Fairchild and Howard Goodkin will lead that session. And then there's one on mechanisms of neurodevelopment that Chris Deppmann and Bettina Winckler will moderate. So
welcome back. I think everybody has been kicked out of their breakout room, so you have to be here. So let's start with Bettina Winckler from Very Fundamental Cell Biology of Development.
Okay, so we had a really very lively discussion, lots of interest in building on the developmental strengths at the institution. I think everybody was really wants to make sure that the strength of having a developmental perspective central to this new initiative and the grand challenges is really important. And we have enormous depth in this field, but also enormous breadth. And so there are so many rare disorders that are developmental in origin that are obvious. Autism is one of the ones. And so there's a lot of possible interaction with people who work on these things. We heard a lot of people mention how we can better know each other's strengths and how to expand the toolbox that we can all as a community benefit from. And so there was an idea put out as sharing expertise through some kind of a soft core where there could be investment into not an actual standing up a new independent core, but as a soft core that has support so that individual investigators could benefit from what everybody else in the community is actually good at. So if you don't know how to do stem cells, maybe you can get that done by reaching out and having that resource available. Chris, I'm not doing the greatest job. Can you maybe jump in and elaborate?
Sure, you did an awesome job.
I've had a request that people introduce themselves before they speak, so okay. I'll let you, but briefly.
Okay, I'm Chris Deppmann. I'm a professor in biology with secondary appointments in neuroscience, cell biology, and BME. So one of the other ideas that came out was the idea of cluster hires. And some of this was motivated by the fact that we have lost, through tenure decisions or being recruited away, we've lost some core competencies, namely, IPSC work used to be a strength here, and we've kind of gotten a little bit weaker. So there could be cluster hires around not only kind of basic stem cell biology in vivo, but also IPSCs, which there was a lot of interest around, and potentially that person who studies IPSCs could potentially run a soft core. The final big idea, and there was a lot of really good ideas, and I'm not doing justice to everything. The final big idea was to maybe think about rare genetic disorders. We've got some pretty good strength, not only through the School of Data Science, but there's been a new hire in cell biology, Karen Hershey, who's stood up the Center for Developmental Neurogenomics. This is in collaboration with iNova. And I think she would be keen to maybe plug into neural developmental disorders. And this could also plug into the notion of cores and cluster hires. Bettina, I don't know if I'm missing anything or if anybody else in the room.
Chris, will you repeat that last name you mentioned?
Hershey.
Hershey, okay.
Yeah, Karen Hershey, she's in cell biology. The other point that was being made repeatedly is there is a great of expertise and strength in model systems, and that we could think about moving from the human disease identification to test and validate hits in model systems, and that people might really benefit from knowing what the strengths, what are the things that we can look at in a model system really well that might be really helpful and enriching to somebody who has a human disorder that they're really interested in.
Karen Fairchild, you want to talk about intellectual disabilities? You and Howard.
Howard and I will talk. I guess I can start. So we had a great discussion. We had some people.
And I'm sorry, Karen Fairchild is a neonatologist.
I'm a neonatologist, as are a couple other people in the session this morning. And in our session, we talked a lot about the need to strengthen clinical research related to cognitive development at UVA. I think the bench research historically and currently is very strong in brain research at UVA. And thanks to Jaideep and Amy and the Brain Institute, clinical research is getting stronger, but we need to strengthen it further in the NICU and in the NICU graduates. So strengthening our follow-up program to make sure that the babies who have cognitive challenges get the services they need very early in life, starting in the first year to improve their preschool outcomes. So that was one of the themes, is trying to support some of the post-NICU follow-up. The other theme that has come out of our session was neuroimaging and the need to have more readily available neuroimaging for research. And that could really facilitate a lot of the research that's going on in psychology and in the School of Medicine. And Howard, do you want to summarize some of the other things that came out of our session?
Sure, no, happy to. I'm Howard Goodkin. I'm a pediatric neurologist, and I agree with Karen that I heard really early identification and intervention to improve developmental outcome, to prevent intellectual disabilities as the overriding kind of grand challenge theme that I heard discussed at the end. We focused on a number of barriers that are preventing us from doing that. The neuroimaging that Karen talked about. I think I also heard that we lack really an infrastructure to assist in maintaining longitudinal cohorts. Follow-up was a concern, and how to assure follow-up of these cohorts was something discussed as a barrier, and also recruiting a more diverse cohorts that maybe just not be our children, but more representative of the real world and not just our bubble is another barrier. Infrastructure that assists in coordination, integration, just like the Brain Institute did today, of bringing us all together, of making sure that the clinicians are talking to the scientists and the scientists are talking to the clinicians. And then we identified prenatal medicine, the absence of a truly dedicated clinician investigator in prenatal medicine that can help us look at the impact of early adversity on fetal brain development as being a weakness in an area for recruitment that we would like to focus on at UVA. So I'll stop there.
All right. Autism, Micah Mazurek, she's at School of Education and Medicine, right? And Kevin Pelphrey with her.
Yeah, I can jump in, and Kevin, you can follow up with things I missed if that works. I'm Micah Mazurek. I'm a clinical psychologist and over in the School of Education, and I direct the STAR initiative, which focuses on autism. I think to summarize briefly, we talked about how we at UVA have some incredible strengths in research infrastructure for autism through the STAR initiative, that including phenotyping, recruitment, coordination, and a registry for autism. And we want to make sure that's sustained because it's incredibly important to build on to the next level of preeminence. We also have really incredible strengths in faculty expertise in various domains relevant to autism, including animal model research, all the way to applied practice. We think that to take the next step, a big barrier that we're facing is the disconnect between the health system and the academic side in terms of IT and just access to participants in the health system. So I think that is a barrier we would like to think about how to tackle to make this work more seamless in terms of recruitment and characterization, getting data at all levels that would allow us to have a longitudinal cohort of kids at risk for autism, as well as other developmental disorders. I think we also talked about the importance of having a common set of data and biological specimens, and perhaps a biobank that could be a really important asset for us at the university. And then ultimately to be able to have a seamless, centralized system that allows us to collaborate so that we can really understand everything from genetics and biology to real world performance in classrooms. And that approach would really set us apart and help UVA be preeminent, I think, because other places really aren't doing a good job of that. So Kevin, I'll let you jump in and fill in.
I think you did a great job. Maybe the only thing to add is just the enthusiasm, linking back to what Karen and Howard were talking about around NICU follow-up, and in general, the idea of recruiting both a high risk sample through the NICU and following them over time, but also a very diverse sample of non or regular risk babies, and following them over time. And I think the need to really be able to go out into the community and collect data, including imaging and electrophysiology and biological samples for genetic analysis is really important. And then the other item that really resonates with what Dr. Winckler was discussing, potential areas where we need to make hires. We have now a fantastic infant imaging lab led by Megan Puglia, who will get her K award any moment. And you know, we're doing, she can do FNIRS and EEG and also fMRI of sleeping babies. And so she's already collaborating with the NICU group. And I think that that's going to be an incredible resource, and can also do genetics work. But the induced pluripotent stem cell particularly resonates as a need, you know, for autism work. And one person that leaps to mind, if we were to be able to recruit her, and I have reason to believe that she's recruitable, is Flora Vaccarino, who's a child psychiatrist at the Yale Child Study Center, but has done, you know, fundamental work in autism and induced pluripotent stem cells. I think I'd put her in the top 2 or 3 people in that field. So maybe somebody to think about as a potential target of opportunity.
I'll open this up to discussion, but I was very interested in the concept of soft core. What does that mean?
Okay, so this was something that we brought up. So maybe do you want to talk, explain your thoughts on that?
Sure. Actually, at UVA, we have many faculty, you know, with cutting edge technology. You know, one person come to mind is John Campbell, do single nucleotide sequencing, you know. And we also have Mazurek, you know, which is one of the best in doing CRISPR. So we actually have a lot of faculty with tremendous technical expertise at the cutting edge level. Because one of the problems, and the purpose of core is to lower the energy barrier. That's the bottom line. However, core oftentimes have 2 troubles. One is keep up with the field. The other one is the expense, you know. So if the core is already in the lab, so you don't have to have, you know, exceptional core, but you do some incentives to that lab so they can, you know, get some, you know, I don't know, financial support or whatever, or recognition, then they can provide support to the community. Those are the cheapest way, you know, to reduce energy barriers and to really get us together also. So that's the idea of soft core.
So something like a postdoc. Huh?
Yeah, that could help. Yeah, already, yeah.
Okay. Other thoughts, discussion?
I was wondering to the clinicians as a question, how do you view personalized medicine? Do you think that is a convergence point or a point of synergy between the kind of vertical integration between the science, the basic science, and the more clinical. So I'm just wondering, where do you think personalized medicine is at, and what do you think needs to be done?
All right, I'm a clinician. I guess I better jump in. I am not up on the literature on personalized medicine as it relates to neonates in the NICU. So I would have to learn more about where the field is and where it's going. I think there's a lot more attention to personalized medicine in adult medicine, and not so much at birth. But we do know that all the babies in the NICU are, not all, but at least half of them are at high risk for neurodevelopmental challenges, cognitive, social, emotional, communication, and executive function. So even if kids get out of the NICU without high risk for CP, a lot of them have school troubles. So I think the idea that we could personalize the therapies that we give to NICU graduates based on early testing, research, imaging, and knowledge of phenotypes. Genotypes is great if we can get genotypes, but really phenotypes, developmental phenotypes, education phenotypes, so that we don't have a one-size-fits-all approach to therapies, and we could target specific therapies to specific babies to improve their school outcomes.
Speaking as a non-clinician, but then we're to the point now where we're able to, for example, predict which of a set of autistic children will best respond to a particular type of a behavioral intervention. And ultimately, I think this idea of a developmental perspective, the inherent idea is that the requirement of studying the longitudinal trajectory in order to, as the predictor of what types of interventions and what types of educational programming, so thinking of it even in the typical context, healthy development, to optimize brain development is where I hope the field is going. John mentioned in another session, John Lucan's, where is neuroscience going and in 10 years, and how do we get there first? And one way is to utilize neuroscience for precision medicine to optimize healthy brain development.
I'll add one more thing. I'm Kate Frazier. I'm one of the developmental pediatricians. So I see precision medicine and personalized medicine really hopefully playing a role in autism in like 10 years from now. The more and more genetic differences we can discover, I'm hoping and hopeful that over time, instead of having, we will be able to have actual classifications of different autisms, and then using that knowledge of the different autisms, kind of as Kevin was saying, then being able to say like, okay, yours falls in this type or this cause. And so now we know that this treatment or this medicine or this whatever will be helpful for your child down the road. I think that is an area of a lot of excitement for those of us in clinical, on the clinical side, just in taking care of these children and these families.
Actually, I just had a quick thought, for us basic scientists, we really love to hear from clinicians about, your potential, hypothesis or, problems or solutions. Because with animals, we can do the tests you guys cannot do on the kids. And also we'll have group to test your idea whether or not it's going to work or not. But we do need to hear from you, what are the problems? And then they have conversations to see which ones are solvable, which ones are harder, things like that. That probably will produce a lot of synergies. I'm done.
Dima, jump in, or John, your hands have been up for a long time.
Yeah, I'm gonna just be very, very quick. And I do wanna point out something that was talked about in our group, which is developmental circuit neuroscience. And I think it touches upon a lot of things that both the ASD cluster and the intellectual disability cluster have talked about. Karen is my mentor. Karen, you are too. And I met Howard as well. And one of the biggest issues, at least from my perspective as an animal model neuroscientist, in the human field is the lack of appropriate models to study what goes wrong in the brain of children when they exhibit these different deficits. And this is something that is really sorely lacking. We cannot address it purely by genetics and purely by human research. And it really falls under the category of circuit development. What happens in the brain that these circuits malfunction. And this is also something that I think we have strengths for now and that we should build up upon, either through new hires and through support of current hires. Welcome, Chris. Because like I said, when I joined, my lab studies preterm birth, and I've had all of these people from the NICU sorely waiting to collaborate with me just because no one else is doing that. And I think we can capitalize on people like that and on areas of research like that just to kind of fill in those gaps.
John?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that the NICU seems like the perfect model. You know, in terms of, you know, taking individual kids and progressing it out, and whether they have a genetic issue and you want to put that into a mouse model that's personalized for them using the CRISPR approaches that somebody talked about earlier, or making stem cells to go forward and really study that on an individual level. And I also think it's an opportunity to interface with things like TUMI and what they're doing with the microbiome. I mean, so many of the kids in the NICU, the microbiome alterations that occur because of the environment that they have to be put in it has an effect. And this can be kind of, you can have synergies with some of the stuff that's going on in infectious disease right now that they've been doing over in Bangladesh for decades with the Gates Foundation. And then, you know, it seems like would be a lot of opportunity to bring in a lot of people using the NICU as the epicenter and really focusing on the kids and not like models. You know, obviously the models could help us answer questions that we can't answer in the kids. And then, you know, with the NICU, there's so much, you know, nutritional issues that are associated with how they're treated, and then the oxygen and all the issues causes neuroinflammation and issues there that we don't fully understand, but you know, at least in the animal models, they can be addressed. So I think it would be a good starting point to bring in a lot of people.
I agree, John, but I also think that the prenatal side of things, a lot of the circuitry that Adima is mentioning, a lot of the research that you do show that a lot of the brain injury happens in utero. So we can do certain things in the NICU, but we can't prevent what happened prenatally. So I think we need to do more research on the prenatal side.
Agreed.
Just a shout out to Craig, who was one of the pioneers in fetal imaging. You know, so I didn't realize we had that expertise at UVA until this session. So I'm super excited because it's something that we've been wanting to get into. And we also, just of note, in terms of things that we can, outcomes that we might be able to promise to the administration as a result of this investment, we put together an intellectual and developmental disabilities research center proposal. Those are notoriously hard to get. You know, a group, many of the people on the call here were involved, and we went in when, you know, they were going to fund 3 and 3 were up for renewal, and they were Harvard and UCLA and UNC. And so, you know, we knew it was a long shot, but we did get quite solid reviews. And one of the criticisms was, you know, we didn't have a LEND, but now we do, Micah and colleagues. And we didn't have, you know, a card-carrying person who had led one of these, and now we do with our new chair of neuroscience, who co-led the one at Alabama. And so I think, as you know, that the research idea in that was to follow this NICU sample, and that could be something that we can predict that we could get. And same with the Autism Center of Excellence. We have one now, but it's a network. And it would be nice to have one that is just UVA and maybe a little bit Virginia Tech based.
Kevin, we are at the hour and we finished all these in an hour. So I'll ask Megan Barnett, who's from the provost office. She's helping the provost doing strategic planning to end this session and all 5 sessions. So Megan, please welcome.
Yeah, thank you for participating in this session and many of you in more than one or all of them. Please keep sharing your ideas and refining your ideas through the idea note. That will be open through tomorrow, but even after that, if you have other ideas, you can share them with Ram or with me. And later in the fall semester, probably in November, the Office of the Provost, the Office of the VPR, and the President's Office are going to co-sponsor kind of a grounds-wide forum on this topic that the entire UVA community, including your students, are invited to attend. And we'll be having interdisciplinary faculty panels further developing some of the ideas that came up in these sessions this week. So thank you all for your help.